It's day 2,232 of a 5K every day without missing a day. If you're new here, welcome. We've got some awesome stuff to talk about today. I am on a journey for the next year to run and record and have conversations just like this every single day. And I'm on a longer term journey of 10 years total. And at the end of 10 years, I'm going to do this across the US, and we're going to raise a bunch of money for charity, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But to today's topic, what I want to do is we've really spent a lot of time on just discipline-related topics. That's going to be a common theme through each of our conversations, because really that's the point of what I've learned through this whole process. And every year there's been a lesson that's had some relation to discipline, but different lessons that build upon each other every single year that help reinforce the importance of discipline and new aspects of it that I hadn't really seen before. And today, what I want to talk about is 3 specific areas in my personal life that I had really struggled with discipline, and then how this has helped me to overcome that and become a disciplined person and transform that area of my life. And I'm using these as personal examples just to drive home some points. And then also, it's just something that's really obviously close to me. So I feel like I can not only articulate it, but I'm qualified to talk on it. And we're all qualified in the areas of our lives to be able to talk through certain things like this as well. So that said, first we need to go back and kind of start to talk about how discipline is a muscle that we build, which is just like yesterday's conversation. And this will be slightly redundant, but the reason I'm doing this is every video has a lot of new viewers. So I want to make sure that you're not having to go back and rewatch, but I'm also not spending a ton of time on it for those that are consistently following this with me. So discipline is most easily described as a muscle. It's something just like a physical muscle where you have to exercise it. You have to do things to make it stronger. And if you stop doing that, then your muscle degrades. You start to lose the muscle over time. And it's the same thing with discipline. And so there's different things we can do, different tools at our disposal to help strengthen that muscle. Just like a weightlifter would lift weights, there's certain things that we can be doing. And this journey of doing 5K every day for over 6 years has taught me resilience. It's taught me consistency. It's taught me to pick one thing and refuse to fail at it and do that over and over and over. It's taught me the power of community. It's taught me how important discipline is as a supporting identity in our lives. And it's also taught me how to push through plateaus when we come to them, and how to spot them and how to overcome them. So the 3 areas that I want to talk about is one that's personal, one that's professional, and then one that's spiritual. And I want to break down the reason I feel like I was struggling with that, and then how doing this 5K helped me build discipline to be able to implement discipline in that specific area. So the first place that we'll start is personal. And there was, maybe I'll say it this way. I've never personally struggled with weight issues. I've always been very athletic. I did 4 sports growing up, and it's not something that has been a struggle. However, there was a period of time where I feel like I just wasn't, it wasn't that I wasn't controlling what was going into my body. It's just that I didn't really have any intention around choosing what to put into my body. And I think there's a big, important fact here just around how unhealthy certain foods can be for us. And by no means am I perfect. I should say this too. Like I wouldn't say that I struggle with this still necessarily, but like last night, perfect example. My wife brought home a candy bar from the grocery store. And so I had half of it. It was like a Reese's Fast Break or something. Obviously not the best thing to be putting into your body. And I'll feel it through my intermittent fasting because the last thing I had last night was sugar. And what I want to share is like, you have to have some intention and some discipline around what you're putting into your body. Because the ultra-processed foods and the things that truly aren't good for you on a consistent basis are things that will degrade your body over time. And we all know this. So it's not like this is anything new. But where I was able to take the things that I was learning from doing this 5K is I could say, okay, first and foremost, I need to be more intentional about spelling out what should go in my body and what shouldn't. And at least if I choose to put something in my body that probably shouldn't be there, that I'm making the conscious decision to do so, and it's not a consistent pattern that's been formed. This was also around the time, roughly, that I had discovered intermittent fasting. Excuse me. And intermittent fasting for me was something that I knew once I started doing it was perfect for my body type. And it really helped accelerate some of the, we'll just say like physique gains that I've personally experienced and that I kind of desired. Not to sound vain or anything, but just the areas I wanted to lose fat in. And being able to do intermittent fasting was really important because it was something that I chose to not only be intentional about, but as I started doing this 5K, it's something that I wanted to combine with the other active discipline that I was doing. And so I was able to take that refusal to fail at doing my 5K and apply it to eating food only during a time window that was really allotted, and then making sure to follow that. And so that's more diet related than it is food intake. But the start of that then showed my body what certain foods did to it or how I felt after consuming those foods. Because when you intermittent fast, there's just some really amazing scientific benefits of things that happen. And one of those is because you're kind of, I know it's not the technical term, but because you're chewing through and burning off that fat, you're able to get down to a specific baseline so that when you put something back in, you can almost feel the effects of it right away. So if you put good food in on top of that baseline, you're gonna feel great. If you put bad food in, like greasy food or super sugary food, right away after you break your fast, you're gonna feel terrible. And so that really just helped kind of build this frame of reference and this element of discipline of being more intentional about what goes into my body. And I don't really want to belabor it because it is a pretty simple concept. It just comes down to, are we disciplined to do it and to follow it? And that's kind of the question. Second, professionally. For most of my career, pretty much all of my career, I've been a business owner or an entrepreneur, however you want to define it. And there's a lot of challenge that comes in the form of optionality. Perfect example is when you go to a restaurant and there's a menu that has 100 different choices of things. And that menu is all over the place. There's some American fare, there's some Mexican food, there's some Asian food, there's, the thing coming to mind is Cheesecake Factory right now. Like the Cheesecake Factory menu is insane. There's so much on there, so much variety. So what happens? Well, you sit there, try and figure out what you want to do or what you want to eat. Sometimes it takes forever. That's kind of how entrepreneurship is. Because at times you have unlimited choices and there's no one there telling you the right answer, or there's no flashing sign to say this is what you should do. We're kind of left in decision fatigue. And when things are not going the way that we want, we often ignore the things in front of us. It's the same thing about with people that struggle being in debt and not having a ton of cash flow and living paycheck to paycheck. The odds of them checking their bank account pretty frequently are pretty low. They don't want to look at it. It's painful. They don't want to be reminded of what the problem is, so we just ignore it. Same thing in entrepreneurship. There were things that I was ignoring that I knew I should have been focused on because I just didn't want to look at it. And I figured as soon as it became enough of a problem, then I would pay attention to it to try and solve the problem. And that mindset gave me a lot of trouble because all of a sudden I was constantly fighting fires that were not small little fires, they were big little fires, or big fires, sorry. And the issue with that is that those fires could have been prevented in the first place had somebody just looked at the little spark that had just formed in the grass and poured some water on it and then moved on to the next one. And so I was able to take what I was learning in doing the 5K to apply the same thing that I did in my personal life to my professional life and start to find ways to pay closer attention to these things. And the one tactical thing that I had implemented was the idea or the tool of a scorecard. And this is a document that you put key metrics on, and those metrics are designed to be leading indicators to show you if there's a problem forming or if there's growth happening. And so you can then be faced with the choice of, do we want to tackle this issue and dive into it? Or if it's a good thing, do we want to continue pouring fuel onto this good fire to keep things growing? And it allows you to monitor that and check in on a weekly basis to monitor those leading indicators. And as soon as I started implementing that, and as soon as I started using it on a daily basis, that scared me. It'll be funny to see the footage of what I did. I can't really see because I'm running into the sun. But anyways, those leading indicators are really important because then you can use those to drive your business and implement things that truly help it. Which then, for me personally, that scorecard filtered down to every other department to be monitoring things that were leading indicators that showed either issues or things that needed to be tweaked. And so because you did that at the company level, and then you started pushing it further down into the department level, it became a really powerful tool. Let me get over here to the trail. There seems to be a lot of traffic in the neighborhood this morning. So my question for you watching this is, have you found anything either in your personal or professional life that has been similar to that or even different than that? And how have you used discipline to advance the things that you're doing and use it as a tool to really become greater and greater every single day. I'd love to hear from you on that. The third area is spiritual. And for me at the time, this is where honestly I was struggling the most. I've told people this before, and I'll share it with you. I feel like there was a period of time in my life, which was longer than I care to admit, where I was just kind of living in the Bible where it talks about the lukewarm church or the lukewarm person that God will just spit out of his mouth. That's what I was doing. I was just being lukewarm. I was being a little apathetic. I was going to church on Sunday, and that's about where it ended. And it wasn't that I was a bad person. I just wasn't living into the call that God had on my life. And I wasn't really pressed in deep relationship on a daily basis with Jesus. And I think a lot of us struggle with this. A lot of our modern culture is complacent. It's hard to hear. It's hard to talk about. It's not a popular topic. But I think a lot of us have just become complacent. There's a lot of verses in the Bible that talk about how the enemy walks around like a roaring lion waiting to devour someone. There's a lot of talk about spiritual warfare, and we're fighting against these powers and principles, not necessarily people. We're fighting against demons. We're fighting against Satan. We're fighting against an antichrist mindset on a daily basis. And if we are not equipping ourselves for battle every single day, then eventually, because we're complacent, we'll be overtaken. And it's that simple. And it's that black and white. And this is what I started to sense within me as I was working to apply this in my spiritual life, was just this thought of, well, of course I'm here. I'm not doing anything on a daily basis other than church on Sunday. What do I expect? If I don't show up to the gym 6 days out of the week and I sit there and try and lift for 7 hours on Sunday, do you think there's going to be any gains? No. You're probably going to hurt yourself, honestly, more than anything, versus doing an hour workout every day, 7 days a week. It's a no-brainer. And which person do you want to be? Do you want to be the person that's struggling, that doesn't have any gains, that's literally on a hamster wheel, just going in circles and not getting anywhere, and still exerting all this energy and then being lazy 6 other days of the week? Of course not. We want to be the diligent and disciplined person that's doing it an hour a day and getting stronger. Of course. So then why is that any different in our spiritual life? Why do we create these compartments where it's okay to be this way at work, and this way at home, and this way at church, and this way at the gym, and this way with our friends, and this way out to eat? Why do we do that? I won't go into the answers, or at least my perspective, because that's a whole separate video. But that's what I was wrestling with. It's like, well, that's a good question. Why don't I read the Bible every day? Why don't I become more intentional about my prayer life? Why don't I start journaling my prayer life? Why don't I start asking God for the things that he promises in the Bible that aren't related to give me this and give me that? Why am I not doing that? And I didn't have answers. There was no answer other than I've become spiritually lazy, period. And since I was building this muscle, this physical, literal muscle, by doing this 5K, there was something that switched in me, which said, okay, this is my new thing to refuse to fail at. So I went out and I researched what's a tool that I could use to hold myself accountable and be consistent in my spiritual life. And I wanted something, because I'm very tool driven, that I could do in repetition, not for the sake of the deed of doing it, but something that could train my daily schedule, my mindset, and basically create this almost craving inside of me, so that if there was a day that I did not do it, that I drastically felt the effects. And it took a little while, but I found something amazing. And I can't quite call it a prayer journal, because it's much more than that, but it's this thing called Daily Kairos. And you can look it up. I think that's the website, dailykairos.com. But it's a book that has every day of the week has a page. And what you're doing is you start by memorizing a verse of the week. So you're writing the same verse down for 7 days. Then you list between 3 and 5 things that you're grateful for. Then you list prayers that you have. And then you go into the books of the Bible, or the verses or chapters or whatever that you're reading, and you jot down your thoughts of what the Lord's speaking to you in that reading that day. And then there's an opportunity at the bottom to do a reflection. That's just kind of I kind of use it as a catch-all for something that doesn't fit into that bucket. And what you'll find is the first, at least for me, probably 8 weeks, 9 weeks, it just felt very task-based. There wasn't real transformation, but I knew that simply my act of showing up and refusing to fail at the task at hand, and refusing to be distracted and pulled away from this commitment, and believing in faith that I was going to hear from God and he was going to start moving through these prayers, and there would be real transformation that happened. That was the mindset going in, which happened to be a disciplined mindset. I was not going to let anything pull me away from this. And that's the beauty of the story with it, is real transformation did happen. I started hearing from God more than I ever have in my entire life. I started, because I was writing these things down, looking back and seeing answered prayers left and right. I started seeing the change in my heart, because the things I was praying for changed over time. My level of empathy for others changed over time. And what was happening? My mind was being renewed. My heart was being softened. And it was so beautiful. And I do that too today. I've done it. Now, there's days that I've missed, for sure. I'm not gonna steer you otherwise. But there are very few, very few days that I've missed. And it's something that I've now got stacks of these, which I switched to digital because I realized that this was going to be a pattern in my life now. And so I didn't want a ton of books. I'm more of a minimal person, but I've got a digital library with files of these finished journals now that I can look back and reflect on. And it's so beautiful because I can look back and see all these big life changes that happened. Every place God stepped up and answered. When I fast, the way he moves, it's unreal. And it's a constant reminder that we need to be disciplined in our spiritual life. And if we're not, we're just a playground for the enemy. And that's why it's so important to build all these things, because we're not doing it just to strengthen ourselves. We're doing it to strengthen our families, our communities, our businesses, those that we lead, those that we follow, all of the things. And so as we wrap up here, coming to the end of the dock here, We've got some friends fishing this morning. There we go, 3.28. Let's face this way this morning and let's pray it out. Lord, I thank you for each person that's watching this video. Lord, I pray for you to just give them the desires of their heart, Lord. I pray that they would press in and get to know you more than they ever have before. Lord, I pray that they would think through the areas and things in which they can be more disciplined spiritually, that you would pour out the Holy Spirit to just convict and show them areas where they can improve. And Lord, then give them the strength and the courage to approach those and to tackle them and to conquer them. Lord, I pray all of this morning in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.